Good evening, everyone. My name is Keith Williams, and on behalf of the Lancaster Conservancy, welcome to Nature Hour. Lancaster Conservancy's mission is to provide wild and forested lands and clean waterways for our community forever. We protect the ancestral lands of the Susquehanna, the Conestoga, and Shanks Ferry people, and I hope we care for these lands as well as these native peoples. For 50 years, our organization has sought out natural places that are so precious and beautiful, they must be protected. Our stewardship team works to restore these beautiful places by creating trails and planting trees. These preserves are then open for you and I to use to hike, hunt, fish, and birdwatch 365 days a year. Special places like Shanks Ferry, the Clark Nature Preserve, Kelly's Run, Otter Creek, Climbers Run, Welsh Mountain, and many others are protected forever. We launched Nature Hour with the goal of bringing an assortment of local and regional experts directly into your home with presentations that help us better understand the Conservancy's work and the work of our community partners. The format for tonight's lecture will be a 40 to 45-minute presentation with 15 to 20 minutes of questions and answers. If you have questions, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll include your questions as part of the conversation. This is the first lecture of our 25-26 winter season. Our next Nature Hour, Stories of the Conestoga River with Ben Weber, will be on December the 18th. You can learn more and pre-register for this lecture and other events on our website, lancasterconservancy.org, under upcoming events. The Conservancy is blessed with incredible corporate support, and tonight we want to recognize our annual sponsors, who include the Wenger Group, J Group, Apex Advertising, Clark Associates, Nimblist, Electron Energy Corporation, Eurofins, Dart Container, Moravian Manor, Armstrong, Richards Energy Group, Lancaster Civil, Commonwealth Financial Associates, PP&L, Cargis, CH&E, and Penstone. And now I would like to introduce tonight's Nature Hour, Winter Birds with Sarah Gotwols. Sarah Gotwols is a Lancaster County native with a passion for nature and wildlife, as well as educating the public on the importance of conservation. She leads a variety of birding events throughout the calendar year with Lancaster Conservancy and with Lancaster County Bird Club. Sarah has presented educational content for the Susquehanna National Heritage Center at the Zimmerman Center and aboard the Chief Uncas. Join me in welcoming Sarah Gotwols.
Thanks, Keith. Welcome, everybody. I'm just going to get set up here with tonight's presentation. And as Keith stated, we're going to do a nice basic overview of some winter birding that you can experience here in our local areas. So first picture, we have a lovely view of a northern cardinal, male northern cardinal in snow. This is a very common species for the area that you'll see regularly at feeders and in different habitats throughout our Lancaster County and York County and along the Susquehanna Riverlands. We're not going to talk about some of the usual suspects. One of the bonuses of tonight is that I'm in charge, so I get to share with you some of my favorite winter species. So let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to look first at our agenda for this evening. So a few things we're going to briefly review: avian migration along the east coast of North America. We'll also explore the diverse landscape of our Susquehanna River Hills area, and then we'll overview the basic bird anatomy that'll help you really sharpen your identification skill set. And then some tools and resources for bird identification, along with some common birds that we'll see during this winter season, nests and other wintertime observations that you can make, and then a few winter birding activities. So really quickly, as Keith said, I am a Lancaster County native. One of my passions over the last 5 years has really been to develop my education skill set. And I appreciate both Keith and his support, and then also Peggy Eppig. A little shout out to Peggy. Thank you for helping me develop all of the skills I need to help bring nature and birds in particular to a deeper meaning amongst the public. So I do help to experience birding through walks. And then also you'll see the picture in the corner there. I'm sitting at a scope, and we did our first raptor watch this year, which is a really unique experience. And we were able to see some broadwing hawks. I want to give a quick thank you to a friend of mine, Cami Freed. So she is a local birder in Lancaster County, and she provides a lot of really unique perspective on our birds that visit the local area. Her ability to capture the personality and really frame the moment of behavior for avian wildlife is really unique. And it's been a pleasure to really use her photography in this presentation. So unless otherwise noted on the slides, you'll see a lot of Cammie's work. And there is a link there if you'd like to request any of the images you see tonight. There is a link to her gallery. So moving into our presentation portion, you see a nice golden crown kinglet there captured in the moment. And birds are a really important part of our ecosystem. They can be harbingers of environmental and climate changes, and they've become one of the most accessible ways for us to experience nature, whether you're in an urban, suburban, or a rural setting. So they're a key indicator for whether or not we live in a healthy ecosystem. And of course, a nice view there from the top of our Turkey Hill Preserve, looking out over the Canonjahela Flats, which is a designated important birding area by the Audubon Society. And this really highlights that the Susquehanna River is a major thoroughfare for avian migration each year. And we see thousands of birds that will come up from their southern uh, summer grounds and then heading up into their breeding grounds up into the Arctic Circle. Connected to the Chesapeake Bay, all 444 miles of our beautiful river help to guide birds along their pathway, and they provide really crucial habitat. It provides really crucial habitat on land and water for a variety of different species. And basically, our river is the epitome of snack stops along their journey. So I'll talk a lot about snack stops along the way. And this is really what we're talking about. This is a 10,000-foot view, if you will, of that flyway. So starting down in the borders of South America and Central America, up through the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, heading up across through the East Coast and across there for the Central Plains, and then up along the Arctic Circle. So, according to the Audubon Society, over 500 bird species actually use this flyway coming up through their migratory grounds. And do all birds migrate is usually the number one question I get. And the answer is yes, not all my birds will migrate far distances, but to a degree, all birds will travel between food resources. They'll travel in between territories to expand that breeding territory, or maybe just a different location that may have been developed and now they've lost that habitat. And that's one of the things that the Lancaster Conservancy aims to protect is that habitat from development. So a little deeper dive into our Atlantic flyway. Looking at this map, you can see a further breakdown of that flyway here. And we really want to focus that our Susquehanna River, if you're looking from this high level view, lies just to the west of that Atlantic coast route, that tributary route that's west. And then we have further out towards the east along the actual coastal plains, and then the pelagic oceanic route that's over the water. So we do see a number of birds that are coming up along this, and then we see birds that are also migrating out and towards that Greater Lakes and Mississippi Valley route and the tributaries there as well. And also noting that things like food resources, climate events, environmental stressors like fires, they can really push the boundaries of some of those migratory routes. And birds such as the sandhill crane can sometimes move from that Greater Plains, Great Lakes area. They might get pushed a little bit further over during their migration route. And sometimes we do get the unique opportunity to see them. So sometimes we have a few that will pop up in central PA just due to the changes in their migratory pathway. So we have a very diverse landscape in this area, and it can be really difficult. When you see this picture, we're looking at Wizard Ranch. It's a beautiful midsummer day. There's a rainbow in the sky. There's some mist lifting, and it can be really difficult for us to convince ourselves to experience the outdoors when the landscape itself doesn't look so inviting. It's not lush and vibrant. But there's a real true beauty and depth to that winter landscape, and it holds a secret. It is teeming with life. So when we look at some of our different locations and how that winter weather can affect them, All of these habitats that we're looking at, whether they're cold or warm, provide the same three things: protection from the elements, food resources, and a water source for the birds. So when we really dive into understanding bird habitat, we think about the springtime being synonymous with the birdwatching activity, and there's an abundance of activity that happens during that part of the year. However, in the winter season along our local area, we also see those habitats that start to come alive. The birds are a little bit harder to visualize, so it's important to really break apart that landscape and understand that there are places to observe within the landscape itself that give you easy observation for some of our bird friends that call this area local during the winter months. So looking at the landscape and really breaking it down, you see the forest and hedges and a scrub layer or shrub layer, potato, potato. We also see waterways and wetlands. So just a quick clarification that a waterway is going to be moving water, so a river, a stream, a creek, and then we see wetlands and then open water spaces as well. And the wetlands are going to have more of that swampy atmosphere. They might have a deep mud layer. Then we're moving into our open spaces such as grasslands and meadows. Some of our wildflower meadows are not so active this time of year with flowers, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to be active with other species that are utilizing that habitat. So there's still seeds to eat and bugs to pick, so they can be very active this time of year. And then, of course, we think about the winter months. Our trees don't have the foliage on them, which exposes a lot of that trunk of the tree and the branches and some of the cavities of the tree that might be there, where our birds might be hopping around and checking out for little bugs and insects or exploring a cavity for a nest site later in the year. And then we have our backyard feeder stations, which I'll highlight on a little bit during this presentation. But backyard feeder stations can be a wonderful way to provide food sources and water sources for our bird friends as they're moving from space to space. So they can be like little pocket snack stops from while they're moving from different habitats. So thanks to conservation efforts and especially the elimination of pesticide and herbicide use in our area, we've seen a resurgence in insect biomass and aquatic diversity. And that's really been what supported the Susquehanna River Valley's boom in avian wildlife. The other thing is leaving the leaves. So that's been a huge movement thanks to a study done and posted by the Xerxes Society. And then also a lot of different environmentalists are really advocating for leaving the leaves on your property. And that helps to encourage that insect biodiversity. It also helps insulate the ground and provide minerals and nutrients to the soil so that our plants grow better and our trees grow taller and healthier. And then it also provides encouragement for birds to pick through that leaf litter. So things in the springtime we'll see like eastern towhees, they really need the leaves that have fallen now in order to have their food and snack stops later. So speaking on our backyard feeder stations, your backyard can be that pocket habitat that supports bird activity year round. So I have our lovely feeder cam up on here. This is a picture from last winter. We have a really beautiful set of birds here that we'll highlight really quickly. So I'm going to pull my laser pointer up. So we have this really gorgeous northern flicker. And you can see the shaft there down on the tail is a little bit yellow. And then I just had someone recently tell me it looks like he's wearing a turtleneck. And I found that really funny. So he has his little turtleneck on with his polka dots. And then we have a couple of usual suspects. So we've got a Carolina chickadee that's feeding on some of the seed. And then up here we do have a sparrow. It looks like a white-throat sparrow. Here we have a northern cardinal. This is a female, and then another white-throat sparrow here. But in this habitat itself, we're providing a lot of different things, but mainly nutrition for these birds, and that means energy so that they can be supported during the winter months, really helping to regulate that metabolism and keep their body temperature normalized and help with digestion. So they're gearing up, they're staying fueled, they're staying warm, and they're gearing up for everything that's to come later in the seasons ahead. Bird feeders like feeder cam are also a way to really observe and practice your identification skills. So I highly encourage anyone interested to place a bird feeder if you're able near a window where you can observe the different birds that come to visit. And then just keep a variety of things like seed and suet, nuts, maybe some berries, dried berries and fruits. And then of course a water source that's clear and free, clean and free of ice. So a little bit about bird anatomy. I'm going to pull up my little laser pointer friend here again. So we can definitely have some challenges with winter identification. Now, this guy needs no introduction in my mind if you're used to some winter birding. This is a tufted titmouse, gorgeous little guy there. And we're going to use him for our anatomy ID review. So, whether you're out and about and making observations, watching birds at feeders, or you're out on a trail, or you're in the comfort of your home and you're watching a live stream feeder cam, it's really important to start reviewing the basics. And this will help sharpen your skills now so that when springtime does come, that you're ready to go, and you can make some accurate identifications. A quick note that there are patterns in the feathers that are really important. So we do see some patterns along the wing and the tail, and then patterns along the belly, maybe across the head and the back. Those plumage patterns can be a little duller on most species, and I'll speak more about that in a couple of slides. So for now, some really quick review. So this is going to be the fire hose version. We've got, of course, our beak, and that can be a variety of shapes, which we'll review as we go through some of our common species that you can find. We also have the throat. We noted a white-throated sparrow on the slide before, so that throat may be an indicator. And then going up and over, actually, we're going to review the eye here, and you can see sometimes there's some stripe there. The cheek is also a notable feature on the bird. Going down the head, the back, the rump, we'll need that one later. The tail feathers. Sometimes is some color on these undertail parts. We may want to note that later in our identification. Of course, the wing. And you may see some barring across that wing that may give us an indicator on species identification. So note that. And then you've got the breast and the belly. So breast being up around the first half, and then the belly being out underneath, and then down into the covert underneath. So looking at our tufted titmouse, we can use our diagram over here and make some identification skills here. So we've got our beak. We've got a nice little stubby black beak. So noting the color. On the crown of his head, he's got a nice little tuft, and that's a gray color. He's got a nice dark black eye. We don't really have an eye ring. There's going to be a species coming up where you'll want to note that. The neck is going to be a little buffy colored. Got a nice dark slate gray to the wing and the tail. Looking at this breast and belly, though, we have a little rusty patch right here, and that's going to be on the side of the body, just under the wing. So this is something that a lot of folks tend to overlook on our little tufted, but there will be a little rusty patch underneath here, but mostly a white breast and belly. So let's take a look at some of our resources quickly. I like sharing that birding as a hobby is probably one of the most accessible, but also least equipment involved. So birders can often go out with just your eyes and your ears, and that's all you really need, eyes, ears, and a little bit of patience. But binoculars can make all the difference. So a good pair of binoculars can make or break the hobby for you. The pair that are shown here are my own personal ones. They've seen some things, so they're pretty beat up. I want to quickly point out that on mine, you will see that there we go, that the eye cups are raised. Typically, I am not wearing glasses. If you wear glasses, you'll want to dial those eye cups down. Couple of quick identifying parts for a quick review on binoculars if you're not familiar. I got the central knob here, which is your focus adjuster. And then you've got your knob usually on the right barrel or eyepiece, and that's going to be a diopter to help crispen that image up. And if you need further help in using binoculars, I'd suggest going to one of my beginner bird walks through the Lancaster County Bird Club or also Lancaster Conservancy, where we really work on getting you used to using your binoculars. Field guides are also really helpful for when you're making some identifications for the first time. I've got two listed here that I really enjoy. Sibley, which is the Bible to us birders, the Sibley birds, and I have the East Edition. David Allen Sibley is renowned for his artwork, and he does a really great job of pulling apart the different plumage patterns so that you can really see and make observations based on age and different times of year. So during wintertime, when the plumage isn't so bright and vibrant, having the Sibley with you really helps to make those different identifications. I also noted the George Armistead Field Guide to Birds of Pennsylvania. I really love this one. This version provides really crisp photographs and then a nice even breakdown of where you would find the bird in the state of Pennsylvania. And you can usually find field guides that are centralized on whatever location you're going to, whether it's state to state or region to region or country to country. Quick shout out to Jerry Luquari. He has two books that I absolutely love using and recommend. He has Hawks at a Distance, which is the first book on top. And the one on the bottom that I covered up there is Hawks from Every Angle. He also covers other raptors as well. And it really gives a nice view there to help you make some accurate identifications of our raptor species. For optics and recommendation, we can talk about that if we need to later during the Q&A portion, but I recommend trying out your binoculars. Everyone's eyes are different, so just like everybody might need a different pair of glasses, you may need a different set of binoculars as well. Moving on to another resource, our smartphone apps have really revolutionized how we do our birding, and they've expanded our identification tools, and they can help you identify new species. So, top suggestions, I'm going to do a quick level overview. The one that is shown in the slide here is the Audubon Field app, and then we also have eBird and Merlin. I can talk about those later. I want to save our time today for really the birds. So let's dive in to the forest. We've got a really beautiful image of a red-breasted nuthatch. So this is a bird that will move into the area and migrate through. You can see here, he's along this tree trunk. We've got this back toe that is unique with our nuthatches and allows them to climb trees a little bit differently, upside down. They can also hang upside down from some branches and really pick in between this bark. Got a nice long beak. You've got the stripes on the head, one going through that eye, and then this beautiful rusty red colored breast and belly going down under those coverts. All right, so taking a look at a few birds that we might see encounter during a walk, and we're going to start at the canopy of a tree or a shrub, top of a shrub. This is our beautiful cedar waxwing. So for identification, we can see here that we've got this lovely mask here across the eye. You've got a little tuft here off the crown of the head, nice, gorgeous yellow color to the belly, and then our buff color, slate color wing. Here's a little tip. The tip of the wing is yellow. So oftentimes when we see these birds in flight, you may see them flying across the sky. Really look for that yellow tip on the tail feathers to be able to tell whether or not you've seen a cedar waxwing overhead. We saw our golden crown kinglet friend in one of our first slides. So we're revisiting this handsome guy. So we've got that really lovely flame colored top. And you can see there's some nice yellow on the wing and the tail as well, and just that overall olivey gray. So a close relative is going to be the ruby crowned kinglet. And we want to take a look for identification. Remember in the anatomy portion, I mentioned the eye. This guy has a nice little eye ring. So this bird has more of an eyeliner. He's got that more smoky eye look. And then this guy has more of a little unique spectacle look to him. You can't quite see it on this photo, even though it's adorable, but he does have a nice wing bar for identification. and then a little bit of a golden hue on the tips of the wing and the tail. But his signature mark is going to be that little lipstick mark across the top of his head. If you're lucky enough, if they're friendly enough, if they're curious enough, they'll actually raise that little red mark on their head in greeting. So another friend we have here, sometimes passing through for the winter months, is going to be the yellow-rumped warbler, lovingly known as a butterbutt. This bird has also a yellow portion under the wing, but if you look at the rump of the bird, that will often have a nice gold patch as well. So really lovely warbler that is often seen during this time of the year. Last but not least, on this slide, we have a winter wren, and he's got a nice camel cricket snack. Winter wrens are one of my favorite winter species. If you're going to Climbers Run Nature Preserve right now before it closes for construction in the following year, you can see the winter runs along the stream and creek and really noting that short, stubby tail. He's got this little round body. They're so busy and they like to really pick through the bugs and different things along the water's edge. So moving along from our canopy to our forest floor, and we're going to look at a beautiful image. This is a common bird during the winter months. And walk recently at Mill Creek Falls Nature Preserve. These guys were so active. So this is our pileated woodpecker, the largest in North America. Very common on our preserves because we've done such a great job at preserving their habitat. So their snacks are preferred the larva of beetle, and they really like picking that out from the dead wood, upstanding dead wood, and then also fallen trees. Another bird, and this photo is from the Macaulay Library, but we saw our northern flicker, yellow-shafted northern flicker, named for that yellow on the underside of the wing and tail feathers. So when you see them in flight, it'll really have that bright gold up against a blue sky. And the preferred snack on these guys is actually ants. So they are more of a ground feeder, so a close relative to a woodpecker, about the size of a robin. They've got this really unique beak that really allows them to pick at those insects and things on the ground level. So they'll be in the trees. Sometimes they'll be talking to each other. They do a little courtship dance called spearing, and then you can oft, or I call it jousting, but spearing. And you'll see them then drop down to the bottom of a tree to really get after the bugs that they are preferred. And then in this photo, he's difficult to see because he's so well camouflaged. We have our brown creeper. So this little guy, second in favorites to the winter wren for me. So you can tell I have a type. I like the smaller and they blend into the background. So this one, I often tell folks, they look like a piece of moving bark. So they camouflage in so well that often you're just hearing this high-pitched sound and you really want to be looking up into that tree right along the trunk and looking for a piece of bark that might be moving in a spiral pattern going up the tree. And you might be looking at a brown creeper. Note the beak on this bird. It's got a nice curve to it so it can pick in between pieces of bark and branches and really get in there to those bugs that are nestled in to stay warm. Unfortunately for them, that's his preferred snack. So moving out of the forest and into our wetlands and waterways, beautiful photo and image here by Cami of an American coot. Um, if you have a moment, take a look on some of your field guides, but the foot of the coot is very unique in that it has a fringe along its toes to really help it balance in deeper mud levels. So this is our American coot. And then moving to a couple of other unique birds that you might see on some open waterways. There's different types of ducks. So there's ducks, there's geese, and there's things that are not ducks and geese. The one that we're looking at right now is a lovely ring-necked duck. So we're not really seeing that ring on the neck, but you can see that beautiful ring along the bill, lovely golden eye, and really distinct plumage there along the body. It helps it to reflect in the water so you can kind of really see how this would camouflage them from predators up against the reflection of the water. So moving on to things that are not ducks, this is a teal. So we've got a green-winged teal here, really gorgeous head on this bird. Got a little tiny hook to that bill. It really prefers to dig around down in, it'll dive down into the water and pick little mollusks and things and fish, and then also some other macroinvertebrates along the floor of the waterway. And our common merganser. So looking at this beautiful image, we see the beak design of this particular bird, and you can tell by the way he's got his neck tucked in. He's got a long neck. So this is another diving species of bird, the common merganser, and his beak is actually serrated, so that when he dives down and he can catch a fish, he can actually be able to really crunch down on that food. We have our wood ducks, also a stunning bird. So back to ducks. So these guys are just one of the most stunning species of waterfowl that we can see on our waterways. They tend to be a little shy, so you may need to be a little patient and really checking in between some of the tree roots and reeds where they like to tuck in and kind of wait it out when they know that somebody's nearby. Last but not least, for my top five for waterfowl is going to be the hooded merganser. So close relative to our common merganser down on the lower corner. The hooded merganser is going to be a little bit smaller. He also has a serration to his beak, but it's much, much smaller. And then, of course, he's got this incredible plumage on the top of the head to really make him stand out to all of the females in the area. This little guy, he's going to get a girlfriend for sure. And no winter would be complete without mentioning our snow geese. I'm going to just briefly show some images. I know a lot of folks are very familiar with the snow geese migration. I highly encourage you, if you haven't experienced a snow goose migration, you can check out the birds at Middle Creek Wildlife Management Area. You can also see them in Lancaster County at the Woods Edge Pond, just off of South Centerville Road. They tend to congregate there in pockets, and sometimes they are on the Susquehanna River in pockets as well. It just really depends, but they really prefer those more enclosed open water habitats. They can migrate in the thousands, and the sight is awe-inspiring. The sound can be deafening. Um, it's something to experience and synonymous with winter in our area for birding. A quick shout out to Lancaster County Bird Club. They actually host snow goose weekends. Check the calendar that's upcoming for the 2026 year, but they will have concessions and guides available to help you navigate through snow goose season. Moving out to our open spaces. So away from our forests, away from our waterways, got a beautiful eastern bluebird here. Let's take a look at the features really quickly on this bird. You've got a nice little white eye ring. He's a little bit kind of dull in plumage. That's typical for winter. So he doesn't need to have on his fancy springtime clothing right now. So he's got his winter wardrobe on. Nice rusty colored breast and side, white colored belly, and of course that signature blue along the wing black back and tail. So I like to refer to our open space birds, grassland and meadow birds as the LBB season. So LBB meaning little brown birds. And really, this is the highlights for our sparrow season. So I'm going to show a few slides here, as a couple of pictures, then we're going to review some identifying features. And again, this is a fire hose version, so please bear with me. We have a couple of images here from Cami, and then I also have Macaulay Library that gave me a little boost here. So pulling up our laser pointer, let's go over a few key indicators. So our middle image here is going to be of a white-throat sparrow, and this is a male. He's in low sunlight, so we can actually see a little bit of the yellow here right in front of the eye, behind the beak, and that's going to be an indicator of a male versus female. He also has a brighter white. Some of the females will have a more dull color or almost creamy color under the beak on the throat area. He's got some striping here on the top of the head and the crown, his little eyeliner. And notice here a nice clean breast. We don't have any spots or markings. That's going to come in handy when we look at the others. So really quickly looking at the top of the head, I'm going to pivot up to our white crown sparrow. So these two tend to get confused, but they are very, very different birds. You can see here that the crown of this bird is more of the black, white, where this one's more of just the black, a little bit of white, black, and then kind of mottled in between. And noting, of course, that there's no white throat here on this bird. The beak shape is very similar, clean breast, and no wing bars here to really note or discuss. So a nice clean brown body, but we've got that signature classic black and white crown to the head. The most common sparrow that's seen in the state of Pennsylvania is the song sparrow, aside from the house sparrow, which I'll just note. So our wild sparrow, the song sparrow here, looking at this breast, so this is where we can see the unique difference here and some key indicators for ID. You can see a little bit of striping here along the breast, and then this soot stain almost right in the center of that breastbone. So it's really one of the things you want to watch for. You can also see here under the beak, we have an area that I failed to review earlier, but this is the lores. So they've got a nice little dark lore here under the beak. We've got a nice little brown eye ring, a little bit of brown eyeliner, nice crown on the rust color top of the head. So beautiful song sparrow, often heard first thing in the morning or last thing in the evening. So they're chatting and telling each other where they are. Going over to the other side of the screen, this little guy here is our field sparrow. This is a species of concern, as well as this little guy here. This is a fox sparrow. So these two little brown birds are finding it a little tougher to survive due to habitat loss, urbanization of their grasslands. So that's one of the things that here at Lancaster Conservancy, we aim to protect these birds and give them a space where they can thrive. So looking at this little guy here, we can see he's got a pink beak. So some of these other birds will have a yellow or more of a brown. This one's a gray, but his is really pink. And he has this lovely white eye ring. He's got a nice little blush here on his cheek, little line along his neck, and he's got a wing bar. So he's got a nice little bar here, buffy colored and no stripes or spots on the belly. Compared to our fox sparrow, we have a nice pointed yellow beak. He also has a little eye ring, but it's nice and dusty in between here. So we've got this lovely slaty color, this gray color, and then the rust color underneath. Really looks like somebody went to town with a little makeup brush on this guy. And then this gorgeous, almost like an arrow pointed on the tips of these breast feathers. So notice here, there's no soot stain. So he doesn't have that same little black mark that this other guy has, the song sparrow. So we really want to look for a lack of that. This bird, the fox sparrow and the song sparrow, be relatively close in size. And then these two as well. So a little bit smaller. White crown sparrows can range, so they may be a little bit bigger if they're well fed, or a little bit smaller. All right, moving on to our next slide. So grasslands also mean that it's active raptor territory. So our American kestrel will also be seen cruising and looking for his preferred snack, some of those smaller mammals and rodents that can be found out in the grassland areas this time of year. A little bit easier to find when the grass is low, the flowers are low. And then we also have our northern mockingbirds. These guys are very out in the open this time of year, looking for their food source, which is preferred. And they really love to have bigger bugs. They have this beautiful curved beak that helps them pick berries off of the branches of shrubs and trees. So you often see them flying across the open and looking for their next snack stop. Last but not least, I'd like to mention the horned lark. This is one of my favorite wintertime birds to see out in the open. You can see these in open fields as you're traversing from place to place. A lot of our open farmland, once the corn is harvested and the ground starts to freeze, you can really start to see more horned lark activity around the months of the end of December through February. Climbers run the field right in front. That often has them, as well as Wizard Ranch over in the open meadows, Clark Nature Preserve, and then also our Kelly's Run wildflower pollinator meadows. Quick note that the horned lark is actually a Macaulay Library photo. And really quickly using my pointer, I'm going to highlight that the name horned actually comes from little tufts that'll pop up right above the eye, and it looks kind of like a wild little toupee that pops up. This guy here has the yellow on under the throat and around the eye as well. He's got this beautiful smudge of black, and he too looks like he's wearing a turtleneck. So a couple of indicating features there. They're often found in small groups of 6 to 10, so you might find a few out in the next field that you pass by. Moving along to a quick talon talk. So this is a beautiful short-eared owl, and we often see an increase in some of our raptor species during this time of year just because of that open habitat, open grassland for scavenging. Taking a look at a couple of quick identifiers, so we have a beautiful red-tailed hawk here. When it's perched, it looks a little like this, and we're going to go over some key identifiers. I'm going to pop up all the pictures first, and then we'll go over the differences. So this is a red-tailed hawk at the top, red shoulder hawk at the bottom. Quick rundown. Your red-tailed hawk is going to have this nice, beautiful outline. It's going to have this belly band as well. So you can see the difference there. So kind of a plain breast and the belly is covered. This beautiful red shoulder hawk. So we've got black tips, but no black outline. And then if you look at the belly and breast here, we've got this mottled look. So if you're looking at the differences both in flight and perched, you can really be able to tell your difference between those hawks, both in size and then also in belly plumage. Two other raptor species for winter. These guys tend to visit bird feeder stations. So we've got the top is our Cooper hawk, and on the bottom is our sharp-shinned hawk. So a little size difference there. Cooper is going to be larger than the sharp-shinned. You can also see that there's some coloration differences. So you've got more of a slate gray and a rust color belly and breast on the Cooper hawk, and then more of just that mottled brown and white on the sharp-shinned. Quick note, these photos are from the Macaulay Library. Winter is also a wonderful time of year to see our eagles. Um, oop, backing up really quickly. Eagles this time of year are really easy to spot thanks to a lack in foliage on the trees and more activity out on the river. So highly encourage you to get out along our waterways and take a look for our bald eagles, which have increased thanks to restoration efforts. A couple quick notes. The first image here is going to be of a juvenile. Second image is going to be of a first-year bird. Second-year bird, sorry about that. So we've got a juvenile and then a second year. And you can see some of the plumage differences here. We're starting to kind of molt out. We're looking a little different here in the beak and the head. The belly is a little bit different. So as they age, they'll start losing some of this brown color, and you can see just a little bit of that white starting to come in there on the tail. They'll start to lose some of this mottled brown color and start to adopt more of those darker, more continuous colors of an adult eagle. Usually by age 4, they have their full breeding plumage. You can see a size difference here as well. This bird is fully extended, so really nice length there. But if we were to look at them really side by side in the imagery, you could tell the difference. The juveniles are a little bit larger. Beautiful imagery here of a bird that's fishing. And then check out for your nests. Again, thanks to the lack of plumage and foliage on the trees, you'll be able to see your nests a little bit easier. Nests are often tracked by some of our different organizations to make sure that the breeding years are successful. Another activity I like to do in wintertime is to really check out some nests. So without the foliage on the trees, and sometimes when the flowers are down, when we have ground nesters, you can often see different types of nests. So we have our lovely red-headed woodpecker here going into a cavity style nest. That's just going to be an empty space like a knot in a tree or a box. Bluebird boxes are considered cavities as well. Chickadees will often nest in cavities, and they aim for protection as well as breeding and nesting. The most common type of nest is this cup or bowl-shaped nest. So we've got a lovely woven nest here in between the branches. This is a red-eyed vireo, I believe, um, for this nest type here. You can see that you use some soft pine needles, and this will be out in the forest. So when you're scanning that forest landscape, you can really be able to take a look and see the different nest types that are there, maybe what birds will be there the next season. So that gives you an anticipation. So while it's cold and chilly now, and there's not a whole lot going on in these nest sites, we know that that space might be revisited later. Always good to come back and check. This other nest here, this is a beautiful blue-gray gnatcatcher nest. So these guys make their little bowl nests with some mud up against a branch, really blending in, and then covering with lichens, so that helps protect it from predators. Uh, the hummingbird nest, although much smaller, often looks very similar and very hard to find. So all aimed at protection and a little bit of comfort. Look how much moss is in this ledge nest. So we've got this beautiful nest here. This would have been a springtime breeding nest, and we've got some moss there to cushion. Up here in the top corner, we have a pendant or pendulous nest. So this would have been from a Baltimore Oriole. This was taken in my backyard this past season. So I was incredibly fortunate to have these beautiful nesting birds right out my back door this year. So this nest is still there. So even though all of the leaves are off the tree, I can still see the nest. Eventually it will fall down. But for now, I get to enjoy it. Quick note here at the bottom about platform nests. You can see very closely there is a raptor in there. So platform nests are rather large, much like our bald eagles, but not to be confused with our squirrel nests that are these more ball-shaped, kind of chaotic nests. So those will be our squirrel drays, starting with a D, a dray. One more quick nest, and this is my own personal favorite find from the year, and that's going to be a wild turkey nest. Did find this on a preserve, and it was really important as part of the Breeding Bird Atlas data set for this year. So currently, the Breeding Bird Atlas for Pennsylvania is being created, and it's using a lot of data sets from citizen science or community science, from eBird and other submissions in order to track nesting activity. So this was successful turkey nest that was on preserve, not far from the trail. So quick favor, if you could keep your dogs on leashes so that we're not disturbing beautiful mounded nest sites like this that are often hidden from our view, but are easy and out in the open for predators to find. Moving on to our bird buffets. We're wrapping up, guys, I promise. So our bird buffets, birds often congregate along that area of food source, feeder stations, and then also it's important to maintain a healthy balance of energy sources for birds in winter, including our natural native plants, things like winterberry, hawthornberry, beautyberry, different cedars and spruce that have buds that start forming in those pine cones, and then also trees that produce forms of sap, like maple trees for the yellow-bellied sapsucker. So those native plants and backyard feeding stations can often provide a lot of energy when the food sources are the scarcest during snowstorms like we had this past week on Tuesday. Not all birds will visit feeder stations, but they will all enjoy a natural snack for sure. So being sure to plant native when you're able to. So highlighting again our bird feeder cam, and then just really quickly some bird uh, feeders in my backyard that were visited this year. I was fortunate up here in the upper corner. I was fortunate to have a Cape May warbler that stopped by in February and visited our suet station there, our cylinder station. If you're wondering, the cage around it is to prevent pilfering by starlings. Um, Credit to Derek Stoner for these two photos. He also captured this super cute ruby crowned kinglet that has been visiting me for the last 4 years in a row. So he's my favorite wintertime visitor. And he does like to show me his crown just a little bit. So that little lipstick smudge, when I'm out and refilling the feeders, he likes to get to know me and he'll say hi. Our feeder station here, I want to quickly highlight that we do have this Yule log, and I'm going to mention that in a moment. So this is just a basic log that I took in a drill bit and made some holes. And then there's a product called bark butter, and you can actually smush that into the holes. It makes a really lovely snack for some of our woodpecker species. Over here, we have a downy woodpecker that's getting the last little bits. Looks like it's time for a refill on that one. I also have another northern flicker here. This is an overwintering red-winged blackbird. It was a juvenile. He doesn't have quite the red wing. He just has a little yellow smudge. Also, back in the background, I just mentioned about sap and our yellow-bellied sapsucker. So this is a male sapsucker back here, and he's getting a little quick energy stop here on our suet cylinder. But they often will drill holes in trees to let the sap form. And then he will often eat the sap and then also the bugs that might visit. And there's a little symbiotic relationship between sapsuckers and ruby-throated hummingbirds, where the ruby-throated hummingbird will also feed on those little sap wells. So just knowing that birds like to help each other out. Couple of winter bird activities. We're on our second to last slide. Check out your local clubs and organizations for guided walks so that you can stay safe enjoying the birds. Join the Christmas bird counts that are available in the area. You can check out the Lancaster County Bird Club or York Audubon to see the Christmas bird count events in your local area. You can also create that Yule log. You can put your Christmas tree in the backyard after you've finished using it in the house, decorating with some bird-friendly birdseed ornaments. You can also create little winter scavenger hunts for yourself to see the different nests and habitats that birds might visit during the winter. That was my last slide. I thank everybody so much. We will have a question and answer session now. All photos, again, are used with permission from the photographer or the affiliated organization. And if you have any questions specific to birding or the Lancaster Conservancy, please feel free to reach out to me or to Keith Williams.
Thanks, Sarah. That was amazing. A lot of ground covered. And we have a couple of questions. So if anybody has additional questions, just go ahead and type them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We'll do our best to get to them. But I think that last picture of the bird, if I'm right, is a junco, right?
Oh, the second to last, yes, that was a junco, dark-eyed junco.
I
Yes,
got it right.
I'm so proud.
Hey, we had a question about that. So those are winter birds that arrived
Yes,
not very long ago.
correct.
How long are they going to be in the area with us?
It really depends on them. So typically they're around for a few months. So I would say December through February is about fair. But it really all depends on climate change. So if we have a warmer winter, they may not stick around. They're looking for colder ground. Whereas, if it is a colder winter here, we often see them stick around a little bit more. So it really depends on them.
Cool. And I want to talk a little bit more about the backyard feeders. You showed
Sure.
the cage to keep starlings out. Is that also
Correct.
effective against other unwelcome visitors like squirrels and raccoons?
It is, yes. So you can use them as squirrel deterrents. However, keep in mind that with those cylinders, there are some birds that maybe you don't want to deter. So if you have larger woodpeckers, which I know you have in your backyard, you may want to keep one of your cylinders open so that those larger birds can come in.
And then for the Yule log, what kind of wood is that you
Yep.
use?
That particular one, I've made it one each year, and that I believe that one was maple. I remember it being harder to drill through, so it was probably maple.
Does the wood type matter or not really?
It really doesn't. It will matter as far as how long that log will last. So if we think about softwoods being easier to deteriorate, a pine log might deteriorate in rough weather a little bit faster, whereas a hardwood like a mulberry or a maple might last a little bit longer.
Yeah. And then, let's talk a little bit about some of the negatives or potential negatives associated with feeding birds, which seems to be a
Sure,
popular wintertime activity. Can you speak a little bit
absolutely.
about things that we need to do to make sure that we're keeping birds safe that are coming to those feeders?
Absolutely. So cleaning your feeder regularly is very important. I like to clean my feeders at least every other week during colder months of the year. And generally, what that means is I'm taking all of the seed out of the feeder. I'm washing it down in a nice warm water, soapy warm water, just Dawn dish soap or whatever you have available. And then disinfecting can be really helpful as well to help prevent spread of diseases like conjunctivitis and finches. And you'll just use a 10% bleach solution. So just adding a little bleach to a sprayer bottle, spray it down and let it sit for a few minutes, and then rinse and let dry.
And if folks start to notice sick
Mhm.
birds at their feet or like birds with conjunctivitis, what course of action should they take?
Disinfecting more regularly is the top priority. You can also take your feeders down for a short period of time, but really disinfection is key.
And then, you mentioned this, one of the beauties to me of bird watching is its accessibility, right? So
Yes.
anybody can bird watch, even folks with significant mobility challenges. And so, one of those activities is community science related to feeders.
Yes.
So can you speak a little bit more about some of those community science programs that people can get engaged with?
Absolutely. So Cornell Lab of Ornithology has a program called Feeder Watch. So if you are using just a backyard feeder or you're watching a live stream, you can submit that data. I like doing Feeder Watch during the winter months. It's a wonderful way to participate in that community science and contribute to some of that research that happens. So check out yeah, Feeder Watch from Cornell.
Yeah, awesome. And I want to circle back on the climate change for our last topic here.
Sure.
You mentioned that the residence time of juncos depends on climate change. We know that that's starting to have an effect on a number of avian species, and one that's a heartbreak for me that we're not seeing the effect here yet, but the projections are not good. Are the white-throated sparrows.
Yes.
For whatever reason, I equate that to my childhood. When I hear that white-throated sparrow call, first call in the winter, I know winter's here, and it makes me think of when I was a kid.
Sure.
And we have a healthy population of white-throats right now, but if you look on, I believe it's the Audubon project climate change projections,
Mhm.
it's not looking good for white-throats and some other birds. Um, but I tend to have a little bit of hope. And you mentioned a lot of the habitat restoration work that's being done by the Conservancy. And
Yes.
that's where some of the hope lies in my mind, right? There's resilience, I think, that if we can provide these birds with the right kind of habitat, that even as climate shifts, maybe the projections aren't going to be as dire. Can you comment a little bit about that? And you and I have had conversations related to that, really focused on grassland nesting birds. So I was wondering if
Mhm.
you could say a little bit about that.
A little bit. And I will temper my opinion just because I am not an ornithologist and I'm not a wildlife biologist. So everything I have is anecdotal. So just a quick note. Um, we have had those conversations, and what I will say is there's still a chance to make the stopgap happen. And really what that depends on is not only some of the contiguous segments that we're trying to protect, but also having those pocket habitats in the backyard. And there's been a resurgence in developing healthy habitat for birds outside your back door. Really, if we're giving them those spaces, that's going to help that stopgap be accomplished a lot sooner. Um, so I think that may have answered your question a little bit.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely.
yep.
Yeah, so Sarah, thanks again. Thanks for your time, for everything that you do for the Conservancy. Once again, folks, this is the first of our 26 Nature Hour series. Our next one is Stories of the Conestoga River with Ben Weber. The Conestoga is a fascinating river, incredible human history, incredible natural history, and Ben Weber just does a fabulous job of telling that story. And that's on December 18th. Sarah is just barely scratching, and I am not a birder. I'm not an ornithologist. I'm not even a birder.
You're a
Sarah is just
birder.
just
You're a birder.
scratching. Well, I'm not gonna own that yet. Sarah is just scratching the surface on this, and so definitely check out our event page, lancasterconservancy.org, under upcoming events for some of those beginning birder events that Sarah talked about. Even if you're not a beginning birder, coming out on those is great. Also, check out the Lancaster County Bird Club, who also runs a whole bunch of bird related events. Sarah, thanks again. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Keith.